Hiya, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, True Crime Files. Your host today is me, Kathy. We're going to talk or show a video on two cops where we are in the Nancy case, prevailing evil. Go to their channel. Please like and subscribe to them if you can, and click on subscribe and all so you get notified of all their new videos. I came across this because I was searching for something totally different to do. But then I thought, I haven't heard this one. So my reaction is going to be the same as with you. I'm going to try and keep it quiet because my son is next door sleeping. So here we go. Are you ready? Full screen.
Well, hey, folks, in today's episode, I'm joined by my friend Phil Waters, a retired homicide detective from Houston PD, longtime law enforcement instructor, a guy that's been around. Phil and I have had the chance to appear on shows together over the years, and I really trust his judgment. Not only because he's disciplined about evidence and timelines, but he's got the experience to back it up, to talk about what's really going on behind the scenes. And sometimes the duck is swimming a lot faster than it appears like on the surface. We're going to be talking about the most recent developments in the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. We're going to cover what the public updates are suggesting, what they don't, and why early crime scene decisions can matter months later, may even impact the case. We're going to also dig into a batch of other things around this case that's now a month old. But I don't think it's cold, and we're going to get Phil's perspective in a minute. So welcome to Profiling Evil. Please take a second, hit the like and subscribe button, share this episode with your friends, do everything you can to kind of hype us up and promote us, because it really does help us to continue to grow, and we like growing. Now, Nancy Guthrie.
And the same with me. If you could like and subscribe to my channel too, that would really help me to grow. It's not just me saying it, it's the professionals as well. I'm not going to try and talk too much through these because I hope these two guys have got quite a lot to tell us. So don't think I'm being rude if I'm not chatting to you.
Is an 84-year-old woman reported missing from the Tucson, Arizona area. The moment this thing started, the public story has carried two kinds of competing tones. A missing person versus possible foul play. And that changed pretty quickly in the early stages. I'm going to talk to Phil about that in just a moment. But what's driving the escalation online is also something I want to talk about, and the speculation online, whether it's blood evidence or personal items like the watch, the recent CCTV camera footage that's picking up a vehicle driving by, or the myriad of gloves they're recovering miles away from the home. And at the same time, as we look at these public updates that feel pretty uneven and frankly fueling a ton of speculation, we got law enforcement behind the scenes, perhaps in a little bit of a controversial pitch between the federal law enforcement folks and the local law enforcement. But let me introduce my guest. It's Phil Waters, and this guy is an honorably retired homicide detective. He's been a longtime law enforcement figure in the South and now nationally, as his expertise has come into play on all of the major media outlets. He's been trained in investigations and interviews, courtroom testimony. He's handled complex criminal cases for decades, and he understands how crime scenes should be handled, the discipline behind dealing with a tough case, and all things law enforcement. And again, we cross paths on news shows. Phil, I am just so thrilled that you'd take time to chat today.
Well, I appreciate you having me on board here, Mike. It's good to see you and talk with you again.
Well, thanks. You know, I want to start right off with kind of the elephant in the room, and that's the disruption that the true crime community can play in a case like this. And whether you and I like it or not, we're now wases instead of ises, and we're part of the true crime community. but hopefully a little bit set apart from some of the wild speculation, and where we try to talk a little more factually about what's going on. But what's been your sense as you've watched this thing unfolding from the social perspective and what's happening behind the scenes?
Well, that's a great question to start this conversation with. What we're seeing here is the fact that it becomes a high profile case immediately because of who the individual involved was and what her association is with Savannah Guthrie, who is a well-known media figure in the United States and probably around the world. So that immediate fueling of the investigation, where it was going, how it was being conducted, started from the very beginning. And then it became more confusing because of the lack of experience that the sheriff had in just being able to stand up at a presser and talk about an investigation. And he was, I mean, from the very beginning, he even stated how uncomfortable he was about being up there in front of the press and this and that. And he was apologizing right off the bat. That does not set a positive tone for the ensuing investigation. So I think from the very beginning, that kind of confused, I guess, expression of what was going on in the investigation started, and it just caught fire. And of course, all the true crime buffs immediately pick up on it. And now here comes the criticism. Then you have 3 days later, you have this jerk from TMZ who pops up and talks about this email that he got from, a ransom and all this stuff. And that should have gone immediately to the Pima County Sheriff's Office detectives and the FBI. It never should have been broadcast publicly, but he wanted to make himself part of the story, which he did, and it continued on. So I think because of who Nancy Guthrie is and who Savannah Guthrie is, it started off with this crazy rendering from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I want to go back and kind of explore that from a couple of angles, because a couple of things you said really troubled me from the beginning. And I think it's systemic with the difference between the office of sheriff, which is an elected position, and a city police department. And, I was fortunate to spend quite a bit of time in your police department, the Houston Police Department, working with your crime analysis folks on the GIS side of the house and how mapping can help in those kinds of cases. Many of your chiefs I knew through the Major City Chiefs Association, and was personal friends with one in particular, where I spent a lot of time with that individual there. I know how you handle things down there. And I remember this particular chief, it's Chief Art Acevedo. When Art was chief, I remember one day sitting at lunch with him and him talking about his challenges become he called it the community of 10. The 10 people in the community who are yapping the most and creating the most noise out there that caused so much of his administrative time, and his attempts to try to buffer between what the detectives and the investigators and police officers were doing versus managing the community. But a county sheriff that's elected has to report to the public a little differently. But that doesn't mean you have to get out in front of them and tell what's going on in your investigation. And I don't know. I guess I felt from the beginning, Phil, that there was just way too much talking. I would have preferred to see a weekly sheet of paper that says, here's where we are on the investigation, because you could vet it, you could qualify it with your federal partners and be on the same sheet of paper. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree. I agree. After the second press conference where he said there's not going to be any more, the second press conference really, I guess it was the first press conference that he had the ASAC from the FBI that came up and spoke. And what I thought was interesting about that particular presser was that the ASAC felt a need to spell his name. And I thought, how odd. And his name was something like Chapman or something. I mean, it was just, so, and then in the second presser, they had the SAC, I think out of Phoenix, who actually showed up, and he did not spell his name. And I think his last name was Johnson. So I thought that was a step up for the FBI. But, when the sheriff said, I understand him getting out there at the beginning. He does represent the department. He is representing the investigation. And make no mistake about it, it's their investigation. It belongs to them. The FBI even, in Houston, we had a kidnapping. The FBI comes in as a matter of drill. They have resources that we didn't have, and they were in there for support and to kind of shore up all the things that we were doing.
But don't you think the FBI decided to step it in as well because the sheriff wasn't doing a very good job? That's my opinion, that the sheriff wasn't doing a very good job. He lost vote of confidence when, like he said, that he goes, oh, I'm not very good at this, and saying to us that after the second presser, that would be it. There'd be no more. I think the public need to be updated at least weekly. That's my opinion, just to sort of say, this is what we've done, this is where we are, and this is going forward. It's simple to put it out that way. And I also think that the area surrounding Nancy's house should have been done in a grid search, have a piece of paper, put it all down in grids, all like little squares, and say, right, we search this square today, we do that one later on, and so forth, so that they know every inch has been covered. There are a lot of things they haven't done, and there's a lot of things they could have done a lot better. Like that glove they found 2 miles away from Nancy's house. That should never have even been considered going to the DNA office, laboratory where they look at the DNA. It's way too far from her house. So there is a lot of things Sheriff Nanos could have done better. And I think probably after this, he's probably going to be voted off or something, or he'll resign or he'll retire. I don't know. But I know that a lot of his police force, his officers that work under him, they're also losing the confidence in Sheriff Nanos.
And we've worked with those guys, and I've worked with those guys. I've got some great friends that were over there that we worked very, very well together. The sheriff, so that struggle becomes, and this goes back to some of the social media stuff. All of a sudden, why aren't the FBI taking it over? So that all of a sudden puts this pressure on the sheriff, and he's up there trying to constantly explain it's our investigation, which makes him look bad. He's got some history with the FBI. He's got some. I've talked to a couple of guys that worked at Pima County, and he does have a little bit of a rough reputation in dealing with the FBI. However, having said all that, getting back to the presser stuff, after the second press conference, when he said there would be no more press conferences until we've got something really, really good to tell you, that should have immediately been, any of that stuff, just what you said, either should have been released by a press release, that's something they could read, or have the PIO get up there and read the press release. So it should have been relegated to the people that do that for a living. But what the sheriff decided to do was do these individual little interviews with these reporters sitting in his office in his golf shirt, chatting it up. And that just adds further confusion. And so, and then you got, coupled with that, you've got unnamed sources within law enforcement releasing stuff, information. And whoever those people are, They are not serving that investigation well. They should not be doing that. And any communication about the case itself should be made through the sheriff's office and the FBI, not these unnamed sources that are leaking this stuff to the media. It just feeds the fire of confusion.
Let me tell you what, Phil, I am so glad you said that, because in one of my videos just a week ago, when someone had from the media announced that a source has revealed this and it spun into a life of its own, I said, you know what? I got an email the other day that suggested that possibly Bigfoot could have been involved in this abduction. It's a source. That doesn't mean you go out and publicize it, and that you don't go out and say this is a source from inside, because especially in a sheriff's department that's approaching an election, there is so much internal contention going on and people vying for who the next sheriff's going to be in positioning. I guess I just wanted to pull my hair out when that happened.
Well, that kind of stuff, I mean, and you and I both, I think you probably had people contact us. I had a psychic contact me. And I've had that happen in the course of an investigation. In fact, it was a kidnapping. I had a psychic contact me to tell me that she knew where the gal was that had been kidnapped, and so forth and so on. And then I've had some emails that have been sent to me from people. Here's my theory and blah, blah, blah. So, these kinds of things fuel and distract from the investigation. Now, what I'm hopeful of is that the detectives and the agents involved in the investigation are not being distracted by all this noise. That they've got their, they're hitting the bricks. They've got, they're on the grindstone, and they're out there doing detective work and trying to get this thing solved and resolved. So, that I'm sure it's frustrating for them when they hear the noise, but I don't think they are being distracted by it. But it does cause a lot of unnecessary speculation, and people, everybody wants to put their 2 cents in, and it's just a distraction. It does not enhance the investigation at all. It doesn't assist in it. In fact, sometimes it hinders it.
Especially when the victim in the case is a high-profile victim because of her association with her daughter. And even when you see things like the President of the United States weighing in on how this investigation's going, it is so inappropriate and clearly is an opportunity to take advantage of, I guess, the notoriety in the case. Let's kind of step back to the very first day of this case, because sometimes I think people don't quite understand the mechanics of that call coming in to go do a welfare check. This is a patrol officer that could have a week out of the field training program and be brand new, walk into that door and tapping on it. Or it could have been an old salty guy that's been in detectives and back to patrol, or whatever the case may be. But it's a patrol officer that shows up, or in this case, a deputy that shows up first and foremost, and then makes a determination that the case needs to be escalated and get a detective in. And you faced this 1,000 times as a homicide investigator, where you came into a crime scene that the patrol division had worked on. And I don't know if you remember the BTK case, but in the BTK case, Kenny Landwehr, the detective that handled that case as a patrolman, and then when he retired as a lieutenant is when they finally captured Rader. So he lived this case his entire life. But as a patrolman, he told me one night we were talking about the case, and he said that when he went in, he saw this after he went in and secured the home, people started showing up. The police chief showed up. One of the commanders showed up, and people were walking through this horrendous crime scene to get a look-see. And he said later he noticed that there was a tray of ice cubes on the counter when we used to make our own ice. And he said, I started marking the time that I saw that, because I knew that was something that the predator must have handled. And so I was starting to build a timeline on this thing. And he said, I spent 2 hours trying to collect glasses and other kinds of things, thinking I might have some evidence. When the deputy chief walked by and said, what are you doing? He said, I'm working on this these ice cubes. And he said, well, no, I was hot in here, so I made myself some iced tea while I was in my crime scene. So talk people through this process of how challenging it is.
That's why if the first person that does, say, a welfare check or go up to property that's deemed to be a crime scene, you seal it off and you only make maybe 1 or 2 people that is absolutely needed to enter that crime scene. And then you tread on like little blocks, you put down little blocks so that you can walk on those blocks, so that you're not leaving your footprints along behind, and you're not going to tread in any like blood or anything else that may be on the floor. So in my opinion, it should have only been a couple of people that should have been allowed to enter the house till the first sweep has been done. So they need to see what needs to be done with that crime scene, and then maybe introduce a few others. I don't know. I'm not a detective. I'm not a crime scene person. I'm just little old me in England that wants to be a sleuth. Yeah, so we will see.
Even the people that should be there can contaminate a crime scene, but then the absolute wart in this investigation, in my opinion, of leaving that crime scene with evidence that suggests that this is not a missing person, the things that may have been or may become the real Achilles heel for this investigation.
Well, I would say that's a great story about the chief and his tea. I will tell you, I taught officer-involved shooting. So investigating officer-involved shootings, which is where we would have the greatest turnout of those types of people, command staff and so forth and so on. And even when I taught just investigations, as a homicide cop, I said the first thing that scene has to be secured. And that means secured from everyone. Now, at the Houston Police Department, I would think it's a lot the same everywhere, but homicide owns that scene. Nobody else gets inside that tape. Nobody gets inside that perimeter except for crime scene units and the homicide detectives themselves. All the chiefs and admirals and field marshals and all these people that show up just because they're rubbernecking, they don't get inside it. And if they find one of them inside of it,
shoot them.
I have taught and I have done it. You walk up and you respectfully ask them to step outside of the perimeter. And I've never had one chief tell me, look, I'm a chief, I'm going to stand here. Not one, ever. And in fact, I had one chief, an executive assistant chief, that called me.
I guess it goes back to the thing. It's not how you do it, it's the way you do it. And obviously, if you talk to someone correctly, they will do what you ask them to do. Whereas with me having no filter to my mouth, I would probably say, get the fuck out of here, and then probably get a shitload of response back. But that's just desserts, isn't it? Let's play it game.
While I was on the scene of an officer-involved shooting, and there was a rumor going around that he was going to come out and he was going to do this and he was going to do that. And I just, because one of the sergeants had been communicated something, and I just told him, I said, you tell whoever you spoke with, homicide's in charge out here with this scene. We don't need any other help, and we don't need other people out here. And that chief called me and apologized because it was a miscommunication. And I knew the chief. I mean, it wasn't like just a one-off kind of thing. But in regards to the scene at Nancy Guthrie's house, I think the first thing is that the deputies were sent to the wrong location initially, is what I have read. Then when they finally do get to the right location, there are some signs there that there's something that's not good. And I'm going to presume it was the blood drops on the front porch, which kind of tipped them off. And nobody responding, of course, to the knock on the door and whatever. Then, and there's a process when we patrol and it would call the homicide intake desk, and here's what we've got. And then we might send a crime scene unit out there first to evaluate the scene. And then the crime scene unit would make a determination whether or not to call back and say, probably need a pair out here to come out and take a look. And that's what happened here in the process of this particular scene. So they didn't know what they had, other than they had some evidence that showed that something nefarious had taken place. And so that's when the investigation starts, when those deputies show up at that scene and make that determination. Now, people have made some comments about the scene was released too soon, to this, to that. And of course, that's all armchair, quarterbacking, a week later. So I would say my impression was, number one, Pima County is not a little department. So they've got 600 sworn personnel, 800 support personnel. So it's a good sized department. I would imagine they've got more than a couple of crime scene units. I would think there's a possibility that they had multiple crime scene units out there, one or two, and they processed the scene. And once that scene is processed, they spent hours out there. They processed the scene, and then the detectives determine at what point the scene is released. And the processing of the scene was complete. The detectives released the scene. Now, they went back to it because the FBI is now involved, and the FBI requested to go back to the scene. And I would have to believe that some of that was based on some tips, because if you remember, there was one point where the FBI went back and they brought a dog with them. Now, I would imagine that was a cadaver dog. And then we had another time where they went back and they're poking around in the septic tank. So, just because the scene was released after having been processed doesn't mean you won't go back to it if you receive information that leads you back to it. I've had that happen in investigations that I've had, where I saw something on a video that I did not know about at the time, and I've gone back to the scene to retrieve whatever DNA or whatever that evidence showed on the video that I wasn't aware of. So going back to a scene is not something that's unheard of. Securing the scene after it's been processed, they did what they needed to do. And so then you've got the results of that has to be sent off for further processing at a lab somewhere, whether it's the digital stuff, the blood evidence, the DNA type stuff, swabs that are being taken, any kind of fingerprints that were taken. So all of that stuff has to be processed. It just doesn't happen on 43 minutes with no commercials. And it takes time. And so now we're into that mode where they've got so much digital evidence. And that's when they brought in the FBI's advanced digital recovery team. And that's their expertise. And they're dumping cell towers. I mean, there's so much stuff going on here in the world and in the means of forensics that I don't see anything that was. I mean, you can always talk about coulda, shoulda, wouldas. I wish I'd have done this. I wish I'd have done that, and blah blah blah. But in terms of what I saw initially, and then as it's progressed, I don't see anything terribly unusual here in the course of an investigation. The only thing that makes this different is the high-profile nature of it, and everybody is seeing the inner workings of an investigation in real time.
And also, considering it's been a month old now, coming into the second month, where do we stand? What do we know? Well, we know about the masked men, one or two people. And a glove found at the scene. And then we saw I don't know if it was the sheriff's officers or the FBI left one of Nancy's tops outside, just discarded on some rocks. and that was used for the sniffer dogs to pick up her scent. I don't know what else we really know. You know, there's so much that hasn't happened in the long length of time that this has been going on. I also had in one of my videos, I can't remember which video it was about Nancy, where someone said that since the ransom note started, there was 2 high-profile men that have died since the last ransom note. Now, that's probably why, if they are involved, I mean, it's all speculation. If either one of those 2 men that have died was involved in the disappearance of Nancy, that's why there's been no more ransom notes. I know some people might think it's fun to get on the bandwagon and send a ransom note in, but you would think, like these 2 said, it would have been better to send it straight to Sheriff Nanos or the FBI. You know, I love it when you get a 2-way conversation where 2 different people from the same background thrash out their ideas. I mean, to me, they should be sat in a shed, and it's called Shedfest, or, you know, Shedfestigation. But I do like listening to this type of thing. It's my little niche, I think, where you hear the best of both worlds, you know, and they can see the faults that Sheriff Nanos has done. So we'll carry on watching anyway.
Time. And they don't have any experience in evaluating it from that perspective. So I think all this stuff about the scene and this stuff, I think a lot of that's been directed in the wrong way.
You know what? When I'm looking at cases like this, one of the first places I go is to my go-to partner, newspapers.com. If you're interested in...
No, we don't do adverts.
I always used to call it the traveling salesman problem of how many doorbells can you ring in an effective period of time. And so a couple of things that I did on this map, and you know I love maps, but is I brought in the camera infrastructure, and we've already learned that the camera infrastructure at the city level was not in great repair. At the county level was in less quality of repair, that many locations had poor imagery, but that some of that was systemic to the local community's complaints that they didn't want to be monitored, and yet that's the same community that's complaining now that they're not being monitored. But the thing that I found so interesting is we moved into the area, and a couple of just key places on the map. Of course, Guthrie's home, her daughter's home, which became an early focus, again, I think inappropriately so by social media, but they're over here. But this location I found pretty interesting when that one of at least 17 gloves was recovered, and it's recovered 2 miles away, and that becomes a news story.
And it shouldn't
that I don't know, from the get-go, I was like, why are we spending so much time on this? And so I did some research and brought in and created, just even to try to help understand the complexity of a 1.5 mile drive time zone around Nancy's home. Again, as people were challenging how many things may or may not have happened with that, I thought it would be interesting to bring in the homes, the residents that are actually in that home, and how many places, how many places people would have to search and ring doorbells on. So here at the Guthrie home, you know, people are saying, well, gosh, it's you know, out in the middle of nowhere. Well, no, it's not in the middle of nowhere. There are thousands in that 1.5 mile radius. There were thousands of personal pieces of property when I put the assessor's thing up there, doorbells that had to be rung, and that became a real interesting kind of a thing to me, because again, you talk about those cadaver dogs, even knowing that Guthrie's home is here, people think, well, why didn't you just search the area? This is still a massive area to search for a needle in a haystack.
Well, that's great. I love the maps. That is really cool. It adds some texture to the discussion, right? So,
Yeah.
well, the thing about it is, I mean, I'm sure they did a canvas. That's investigations 101. You do a canvas of the neighborhood, the immediate area there, and you go out and you start to try to estimate what was the escape route.
I must admit, till I saw that map, I didn't realize how many properties seem to be quite near to Nancy's. It is unbelievable how many they would have to done, and it's not like they're all dotted in a straight line. They're like pebble dashed.
They leave? How did they come in? Do we have cameras along whatever those routes may have been? And you may come up with 2 or 3 different routes. And how far out do you go? 2 or 3 miles in a radius, and start picking up convenience stores and that kind of a thing. And do you have any common vehicles that you can identify that were in the area at the same time on these outer reaches? But Pima County itself is 9,000 square miles, and most of it's desert. So these folks that think, you can just go out there and find a body or find someone, it's not realistic, and it's the sin of expectations that are much too high. And so the reality is that it takes time.
And as you can see as well on this map, where Nancy's home is, there's quite a few different routes they could have took. They could have come out and turned left, and then you got the crossroads, or you could come out, turned right, and carried straight on wherever right leads you. But to me, or actually, if you turn left and then right, that looks like a dead end. But the only 2 routes I can see is you come out Nancy's, turn left, you first left again, you got another road that leads you all the way down to other roads, or you could go straight on and then branch out to all the other roads. So the route is quite difficult. I mean, there's her house is there, so 1 way, 2 ways, 3 ways. Try and work this out. 1, go down there
to do this stuff.
3,
and
4.
and that's
about 4 ways you could.
The map you've got up here just shows it's something tangible that we can look at and see what the enormity of trying to.
And once they've gone to each property, they should put an X on the map to say we've done this one, covered that area. That map to me looks pretty good.
To cover that area with manpower, to ring every doorbell, to canvass every home, and then how far out do you go? So, that brings this. That's great, because it brings it right into the reality of an investigation like this and the scope of it.
Yeah, I would hope that they're using something like this. But even if you get down and try to understand, I mean, think back on your own homicide career where you've found maybe a child that was taken and dumped somewhere. This doesn't feel like much until you're looking and trying to search in that area.
Well, yeah. Well, number one, I don't believe it's ever been a kidnapping. I mean, that was my take from the beginning. I don't think it was ever a kidnapping. It was good in the sense that it brought the FBI in because they thought that may have been what this was. and bringing in all those resources. But, you know, and I hate to say it, and I've said it before. I mean, I hate to say it.
If it wasn't a kidnapping, why would the person take Nancy with them? You know, I mean, they could have, if they killed her then and there, you know, they may have entered her home thinking she wasn't there, and then stumbled across her. But most people would kill somebody in their home and then leave them in their home. So it's really weird how he's saying it's not a kidnapping when Nancy clearly isn't in her home or anywhere nearby. So it's just mind-boggling. Is it kidnapping or is it not a kidnapping? You know, and then you got the ransom notes, which would suggest it was a kidnapping. That's if you can take those ransom notes for gospel.
But we're looking for a recovery now. Obviously, I mean, you know, 84-year-old woman with the physical problem, health issues that she had, pacemakers, and so forth and so on.
Just be right back.
And I'm not so sure that she was taken out of the house alive, or she was not mortally wounded when they removed her. And, you know, a lot of people have said that, you know, why take her? Well, because the body, you know, in our world, Mike, the body is evidence. And so why not take the main part of the evidence out of there? And so that, I don't find that strange at all. And given the area, there is no telling where they could put her, and only they will be able to bring authorities to her. So that's the conundrum here.
How would you like to? And of course, I mean, you're from Houston. 20 minutes out of town, you start getting into some pretty unforgiving country. Find the body out there.
Well, Houston's 600 plus square miles. Just find it in Houston. In fact, I have my last case that I went to trial on last year was a no body murder, and we have still not recovered the body. And unless this person who's been convicted and is in prison decides to do the right thing and say, this is where I took her.
And talking about no bodies, look at Rebecca Park and Jake Harrow. We still don't know where that baby Emmanuel's body is.
Hopefully somebody will come along, you know, and find it somewhere. But we've got, I want to tell you, 2,500 miles of bayous. I mean, it's unbelievable. So you can hide a body in Houston, Texas, in the area, and never find it. And I have a case just like that. So yeah, I mean, people I think have their expectations about something, about finding a body. Again, I mean, they watch a lot of television, and that's just not reality.
Yeah. I wanted to pop up one other thing before I turn this map off, and that was the CCTV camera that picked up the cars driving by that became so much fodder. I actually was on with Vinny Friday night talking about that and saying that in order to get there, they would have had to have, the moment that pacemaker disconnected from the phone itself, they had 6 minutes to get to that location, which you could drive and make it when I looked at the travel route. But the thing that I found so interesting, Phil, and this is the most likely route that they would have driven to go past that house to capture that video, if in fact that was the same vehicle, is right in this area where I'm circling the mouse arrow a little bit, is that area where that glove that became so significant for so many weeks. Again, 17 different gloves that were recovered up to 7 miles away. And we were spending airwave time talking about this glove right here, which I struggled with the minute that one came out. But what I found was kind of interesting is that this, if in fact that vehicle is tied to this location, this is a destination because there aren't any outlets over here when you look at the road network in comparison to, in fact, I'll just do that real quickly to kind of to highlight that. That road network down into that area, you can't go anywhere but into here, where if you were to look at other areas as an egress point, where that glove was recovered, goes down to a main thoroughfare. Eastbound gets you out to main thoroughfares. Even northbound gets you to where you can get out of Dodge pretty quickly, and even eastbound. But that location right there, there's no place to go. So the motivation to go there, unless they were lost, and you have to always, I guess, think about stuff like that too. But
yeah, sure.
What was that, to me, it just seemed less likely to be tied to this case.
Well, I agree with you. And when they popped up with the glove, again, the thing that's unique about this investigation is we're seeing it. We're seeing it play out, and I don't think people are used to that. So, the media, they promote this stuff, right? I mean, they gotta get after the glove, and they all this stuff has been on the glove. And I'm sitting there with the minute I saw the glove, I thought, well, that's a piece of evidence. That's one of those things that you collected, and you may not need it, but if you need it, you need to collect it. So it's kind of one of those things where you pick it up, and you'd rather collect it, not need it, than need it and not collect it. So, and then my thought is, well, hey, so what's going to determine whether this glove means anything? Is Nancy Guthrie's DNA on it? Is there DNA inside of it that wraps to the house, to the scene?
Because let's face it, when you first put a glove on, you've got your hand, and then you put your hand inside the glove. So on the first glove they use, there will be DNA, touch DNA on there, because you've actually had to pull the glove on, and you probably sort of like sorted out the fingers. But then when you do the second one, you've already got a pair of gloves on. So when you do the second gloves and the third gloves, if you wore 3 pairs, you got no DNA on there. So it would only be the very first glove that went onto the hands that is of importance. With the suspect's DNA, Nancy's DNA could be on any of those layers, depending if they took any layers off. So you got, a theory there of touch DNA on the very first glove the suspect put on. Let's play anyway.
And that's going to determine whether or not this piece of evidence has any probative value at all. And then it turns out it doesn't. So, but people clamor because they're seeing this investigation take place in real time. It's like the search warrants that were run and the people that were detained and this and that. Yeah. I mean, it's just been a media firestorm now. This latest little dust up in the Middle East has taken a lot of this right off the television screen, and that may be
here in the UK. I only heard about 3 times about the Guthrie case, but I, was following the media that was outside Nancy's house for a few days, and there was one day I just watched JLR Investigates all day long, because I was so hooked to it. But now I'm losing interest in it because I'm losing interest in Sheriff Nanos. There's not a lot of reporting. I follow Brian Enton a lot, and I will listen to him whenever he puts a release out. But I just found myself getting so overwhelmed with the Guthrie case. I had to stop myself from watching it because it was annoying me that every single day that went on, we weren't getting anywhere closer. I understand the sheriff and the FBI are holding cards to their chest that they don't want the public to know about. But I just felt it was going nowhere. So I felt that, I stopped watching most of it unless it was breaking news of Nancy Guthrie, and then I would watch it.
A good thing in the sense that it's less distracting for the detectives. And at this point in time, like I've said, they are they're waiting for the results of stuff. So you've got the evidence recovery team from the FBI involved in this. You've got their advanced forensic digital recovery people in it. I'm sure they're dumping cell towers, but those take time. I had an investigation where we dumped a cell tower, and there were 100,000 phone calls, and we had the exact time frame in which this person was using a cell phone. It was a month later, 2 months later, where the FBI agent that was working it was real excited because he pared it down to 50,000. And then 2 months later, he comes down and says, "Okay, I've got it down to 15,000." And I'm like, it's amazing to me that they can do it. But this stuff takes time, and people just have to be patient.
Phil, the other thing that I found so interesting with the number of media that are looking at this case and the number of socialized content creators that are putting stuff out or hanging around is how would you like to be those police officers having a cadre of people camped outside the police department just waiting for you to mobilize a vehicle so they can follow you to the next search warrant?
Well, and that's a huge distraction. And of course they're all, SWAT's all doing this and doing that. Look, when there were many times where we were executing warrants, and we would have SWAT come in and secure the scene, and we come in behind them and process, whatever the search warrant's calling for, and or we would use the Gulf Coast Violent Offenders Task Force guys. They would come in and they kick the door, they secure it, and I'm right in behind him, and I'm putting the handcuffs on somebody. So people only know what they know based on what they see, and not necessarily what they have experienced. So, and then they try to attach that same kind of thing to every investigation. All these true crime, they attach the same. I've watched all these different shows, and I know that this and that, blah blah blah. And and I appreciate their interest in all that, but the problem is that it does confuse things. And in regards to the cell site stuff that she's talking about, I had a triple homicide. There was an AUSA that was possibly a target, and we brought the FBI in.
And let me just, because people don't know sometimes the acronyms, folks, he's talking about an assistant attorney for the U.S. Attorney's Office, right, when he uses that acronym.
And so we brought in their digital people, and we had the bad guy on video. I've got the entire episode, the entire incident on video. We didn't have access to the DVR at the time. We got that later when our forensic video people downloaded it, and we could see exactly what happened and who did it. But the guy was all dressed up, much like these guys, dressed up, clearly trying to disguise themselves. But he was before he walked into the office and started killing people, he was on a phone, and it appeared that he was really on the phone. So we brought him in. They found the tower. They downloaded, did a dump on that particular tower, which was, I was telling you, it had 100,000, and we had a time frame. We had like a 40-minute time frame. So I mean, we were really very specific, because this is the middle of Houston, Texas, in the morning. So you can imagine just that time frame. There were over 100,000 freaking calls, and it takes time to get through all of those calls to get you down to the right one. And so it's great to have this stuff, but again, you're talking about time. It just doesn't happen in an instant. it's very tedious work. These guys that do this forensic digital stuff, I don't know how they do it. You got to be really freaking focused. You know, I mean, you gotta. But that's what they do. That's what they love, and they're good at it. So, but all of these things together in the Guthrie investigation, I'm still confident that they're going to find the right person who's done the wrong thing to Nancy Guthrie, and you know, my prayer is that they bring her home. And so, but you know what, we wouldn't even be talking about this if it wasn't for the high profile nature of it.
Well, hey, everybody, I hope you're enjoying this conversation with Phil Waters. We're talking about the Nancy Guthrie investigation, and I want to just pause long enough to just remind you that CrimeCon is just around the corner. Las Vegas, Nevada, May 29 through 31. So if you'd like to...
And that's where Jay from Guilty of Crime's going to in May. I wish I could go there, but I can't afford it.
To take advantage of that, just enter the keyword profiling evil in the voucher area during your registration. I hope you'll come to my presentation on the big stage while you're there, and that we'll have time to visit in the halls of CrimeCon. Hey, thanks for your support, and please consider going to CrimeCon.
That's the only.
I find that interesting because you think about this, the number of people now in an abduction, it's about 100 a year if I'm understanding the Bureau of Justice statistics correctly. But when you're talking missing persons, it's 800,000 a year.
Oh, yeah.
And to expect law enforcement to spin up to the degree that a case like this takes on every one of those missing person cases, while you wish you could, doesn't make bit of sense. That's not reality. No department's got the resources to do that kind of a thing. That's why missing person. That's why people get frustrated with missing persons. You know, we've got a missing person division, and really they're just kind of report takers, right? I mean, and if they have something that looks like it's moving in a different direction, who do they call? They call homicide. And then we take it over, and then, you know, and so we may work hand in hand with them, but once there's an indication that there's something nefarious going on, boom, it goes to homicide, and that's what's happened in this particular case. Although people have gotten confused, I've referred to the scene that they worked as a homicide scene. Well, it's the homicide detectives that are working the kidnapping, regardless of whether it is a murder. It is still a homicide scene. So I have to make the distinction between, but it is being processed as if a murder occurred there. So people, you'll get the terminology about what's happening in the course of an investigation. So at this point, I just don't see anything strange that's been taking place in this investigation. You have these ups and downs, and that's the nature of the beast. And now's the work, isn't it? I mean, you've got through this immediate casting of the net, and now you're going back and trying to go through every bit of information that's come in, again, on those tips for one thing, but I think it's also kind of interesting because I would say in many cases, in a case like this one, that the suspect who might ultimately get charged or suspects probably already have been identified. It's just a process of getting all of the evidence to support it and make a case that's going to make it through court. That's my personal opinion on these on these cases like this, where there's so much focus, so much emphasis on the individual rather than just an opportunistic kind of thing. And I'm not saying this wasn't opportunistic, because I still find myself leaning a lot toward this could have been something that just fell apart, and somebody who fantasized about how they were going to dress up and break into a house suddenly had a tiger by the tail. But I do think they've made some decisions that made this a lot more focused on the victim and the victimology.
Well, of course. I mean, because of who Savannah Guthrie is. I mean, that's just the reality here, and that's not. And I'm not trying to minimize it. It certainly is something that has to be considered. That is this something that's been done because of who Savannah Guthrie is. I mean, she started her career, I think, at Court TV. So I mean, she's got a pretty long career. There's no telling who feathers she may have ruffled along the way. But the Guthrie home there is it's a nice home, swimming pool. I mean, and I would think that people have they know who she is. And it may not have been her being a target, may not have been an arbitrary thing, but it may have been based on what they thought she had that they could steal. So we're only going to know until we're not going to know until someone is in custody, and hopefully they will offer up admissions and an explanation as to what they did and why they did it and where they took her. I'm more inclined to believe that they went in there for the purpose of stealing something, and something went horribly wrong. Yeah. So we still don't know the interior of the scene. They have released very little from what they collected inside that house.
That's what I said on one of my previous videos, that we've seen everything outside, sewer pits and everything else, but we've never seen anything with inside Nancy's house. I know it's her privacy, it's her domain. And like the other day, they were saying they've installed new CCTV cameras and burglar alarms. If by a miracle Nancy is found alive, I don't think Nancy would want to go back there. I really don't. Who would want to go back to that, complex? Over here, we call it a bungalow because there's no stairs to it. But who would want to go back to that house knowing what's been happening over the last 5 weeks or so?
As they should keep that close to the vest, because we want to, when we get this suspect, when we're interviewing them, we want them to provide the information that we know, that we have inside that scene, that would only be known by the person who committed the act.
Yeah. In fact, I have felt from the beginning, well, once the porch guy video came out, I felt from that point forward that this was a clearly fantasized, pre-planned event by a guy who didn't know how to execute a plan.
I would have to agree with you. I mean, he's got all the accoutrements, right? The gun. I mean, the whole outfit is just kind of bizarre. I mean, it's like they were. They
Halloween party
planned it, but it's like the reality of actually going and executing the plan may have turned out to be something much, much different. So, I mean, the deal about the video where he's pulling up the plants or something and putting it, that was just, I'm like, what in the world are you thinking there, man? I mean, that's, if I got the guy in the interview room, that would be one of the first questions I would ask him. So what were you doing with the plants? And, there's a lot to glean from that video and watching his mannerisms and so forth and so on. I think I read the other day where somebody has come out. I think, we've got, 1,000 now retired FBI agents that have come out of the woodwork for this thing. But one of them suggested that there was a walkie-talkie or a handheld radio of some kind. I don't know about that. I don't know.
I keep thinking, isn't that a strap off of the backpack? I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't, I mean, it could be. I'm not going to, I mean, anything's possible in one of these kind of investigations, but I thought that was.
Or it could be the edge of a mobile phone. That is obviously switched off, hence no cell towers have picked it up. It could be a number of things, it could be anything.
I don't know what that was. Maybe just to get some more airtime, and I don't know. I don't have any idea. But
that tip I got might actually be right, though, Phil, because we haven't had many sightings of Bigfoot in the Tucson area.
Oh,
so.
Well, there is a Yeti everywhere in some form. Texas has it. Arkansas's got. I mean, they're all over the place, so you just never know.
Don't have one in the UK.
And I think sometimes people want to see a lot of stuff that just isn't actual.
Well, sure. I mean, and that's the nature of people, though, right? So I just think it's I think at this point, here's what I would wish at this point is that the sheriff would stop talking. I think that adds more confusion to this thing. I know he's trying to do. I think he's trying to do the right thing here, but trying to be open and this transparent and all that. That favorite word everybody wants to talk about. But there are just times where we just need to quit talking and let him do at this point do a bi-weekly press release. Here we are. Here's what's done, and we're doing it. We're continuing to do this, and blah blah blah.
Like I said at the beginning.
And then the detectives, as they have done, and the FBI that are working on this case, they will release things as they think are necessary to release that will hopefully generate more leads.
An incredible investigator. You're still doing some work in that regard. So how do they find you? Through the website?
Well, all they have to do is go to my website and then contact me. There is a link there where they can send an email directly to me if they want to contact me for any reason. And I get a lot of folks that want to talk about some of these cases that I've been on talking about, which is great. And I try to answer every one of those. I don't want to make anybody feel that they're not being heard.
Well, Phil, I'm going to leave the final word to you. Thanks again for coming on. I think we could just continue to talk for hours and hours because we've only explored a couple of little tenets of this case, but we'll just have to do it again. We'll figure out another case and get on again.
Oh, absolutely. And I appreciate you having me on, Mike, and I look forward to the future. We'll talk about, whatever case you want to talk about. And of course, continue to keep the Guthrie family in our prayers and hope for a recovery and a solution to the getting somebody in custody who's done this thing.
Well, folks, I want to thank Phil Waters for joining me today and for talking about the Nancy Guthrie investigation. And really, I hope what you caught is that we talked about just some basic investigative principles, not just the Guthrie case, and the way in which some of these cases are handled, some of the things that may have been a wart or two, and some of the things that they're doing well. Because I think the police department, the sheriff's office in this case, and the Bureau are probably doing a whole lot of good that we're not aware of. I hope you'll watch for Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you like to get your true crime on the go, check out our audio podcasts at Profiling Evil. You just go to any of your favorite podcast platforms and you can download us there. And please take advantage of listening to our new podcast, Gardens of Evil, Inside the Zion Society Cult. It chronicles my takedown of a cult many years ago and the rescue of 32 children. Because this podcast includes commentary from the police officers who took part in that early morning raid when we took down the compound. 70 police officers were active on that particular crime scene. It includes the commentary from the victims, from prosecutors, victims advocates, and even the surviving spouse members of these kids who are now 45 and 50-year-old women. You won't want to miss Gardens of Evil. #1 worldwide on Apple Podcasts, and we couldn't be happier. Thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime.
Yeah, so there you go. What do you all think of that then? I thought it was really good. I do like it when you get two professional people talking about the way things are, what they would have done differently. It is a whole new way of looking at things. Yeah, so I enjoyed that one. So please feel free to go to all their social sites and hit them up. And also, if you can like and subscribe to my channel, you're not liking me, even though I'm fabulous. You're liking the content. And I need to get up to 1,000 subscribers. That's going to take years. But if each one of you that watch this hit subscribe, you're helping me out. And plus, when I release other videos, you get a notification that I've done it. Once I'm up to about 100 subscribers or so, I might lower it a little bit down to maybe 70 to 80. Then I'll start doing lives, because then it'd be worth having more people in the chat to chat to, which is part of the thing I would like to do most. You know, I'd like to be able to talk between viewers. So if you could like and subscribe, and if you fancy buying me a cup of coffee rather than me drinking my Voss water in a glass bottle, you could go on to buymeacoffee.com, type in Cassie P, and you can buy me a coffee. So that would be really nice, because so far no one's bought me a coffee. So no one's liked my content. So I think in a minute I'm going to have to get the violin out, because I'm feeling really sorry for myself. No one's bought me a cup of coffee. Oh, get the tissues out. Oh dear, I'm crying. Yeah, so getting back to Nancy Guthrie. Like I said, if she is by a miracle found alive, I don't think she'll want to go back to her house ever. So I can see that house going up on the market. And because of what's happened there, I reckon it'd be overpriced. And that, you know, very overpriced. But I do hope they find someone soon. But my fear is, if they find the person that has done it and they've managed to catch his DNA, um, there's nothing to say he's going to talk. You know, he could go no comment all through the interview. And if it went to court's trial, he could do the same. He doesn't necessarily have to get up on the stand to say anything. So, which I think is a bit of a cop out, really. So, you know, here we are, you know, just over a month into the disappearance of Nancy, and we're still none the wiser, really. I mean, they've given us some bits of exciting news, you know, when we first thought the FBI arrested people and thinking that, but I think it's slowly losing traction till they start putting breaking news and that. But JLR and Brian Enton are both out there still. So feel free to go onto their YouTube channels and subscribe and sub up if you can. Same as me. I haven't got no subs on my account yet because I'm not doing worthy enough by YouTube. But help this woman out that's got dyslexia. I'll call the dyslexia card, because I do have dyslexia. So I'm not lying. And I have many other things wrong with me as well. But yeah, so you're only clicking to like, to subscribe because you like the content and not the host. So thank you very much for watching. And till the next one, I'm normally putting out videos every single day. So you probably get a bit sick of me. All right then. Bye now.